Hey, buddy.
Uh, right on, Dave. Thanks for taking the time, bud. I hear that you're on vacation right now, too, of all things.
I am on vacation.
Jesus, the guy's doing interviews on his vacation, for crying out loud.
There is no vacation in rock and roll.
That's right. So how is your camp? Let's get right to it. How's your camp dealing with COVID and all of that, surviving it?
Well, Camp Ellefson, we're just, it's interesting. Megadeth, of course, had to shut everything down as far as any touring goes. And that's now been rescheduled for next year. So, the way I work is I also have my own.
Could I pause you for a sec there, Dave? Of
course.
Are you optimistic that the Megadeth stuff will actually happen next year?
You have no to be. Who knows? I mean, I think at some point you have to act as if, and you have to prepare and take the actions as if that's going to happen. Because otherwise you just sit around in a pile of negativity and the sky is falling and it's never going to work. And so, I think that's kind of my whole life. I have a bit of a duality with it in one way, because of course, when Megadeth's up and running, that takes up, most of my time, and you really have to fully commit to that. And, but that also is a lot of organizational planning, months, sometimes almost a year out, where that is. And because it doesn't always, we're not always doing stuff. I've found, I think, with my Ellefson solo band, my coffee company, my record label, I've got these other things that I do that quite honestly keep me, creatively engaged in different worlds that I wouldn't just being a bass player in one big rock band. Because I did that for 20 years, and then one day that ended in 2002. The band broke up. And that sort of launched me out. I had two ways. I was either going to be flicked out into the cornfield with the scarecrows and the ravens, never to be heard from again, or, climb back over the fence and roll up my sleeves and get busy and get going, which is what I did. And, I worked artist relations for Peavey. I went to college. I got my degree. I did a bunch of stuff, and, and a whole bunch of band op things started opening up, and I kept playing. And, so now it's like, I do all of it, I'm in Megadeth and I do all these other things. And I think, at my age, at this point, that it's a very rewarding and creatively compelling life that I have.
And obviously you've made the covers album, No Cover.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was talking to Todd Kearns, and he says before I forget, he says to say hi. He goes, "Oh man, I love Dave. He's such a great guy."
It's funny. I knew Todd. Tim Ripper Owens had introduced me to him. He was the singer of a group over in Las Vegas called the Sin City Sinners, and it was him.
That's right.
Yeah, Brett Muscat from Faster Pussycat, and doing what musicians do when they're either in an off season or whatever's going on. They put things together. In Vegas, of course, there's all kinds of fun stuff like that. So I jumped in and I played with them, and Todd was wonderful. And then, of course, now he's the bass player in Slash and Miles Kennedy's band. But yeah, Todd is just, in fact, when Frank Bello and I were over, we have our group Altitudes and Attitude. We were on tour with Slash a year and a half ago over in Europe. And of course, we're all big, Kiss fans and stuff, and Bello and Todd were geeking out on Kiss stuff. We jam some Kiss tunes, So, and I think that's the world we live in anyway. And I think now with the pandemic and the shutdown, everybody's at home going, "Oh my God, let me out of the bubble. How do I get out?" And, you see all these sort of quarantine jams on the internet. And, the covers record for us, No Cover, the way that started is, we already have the Ellefson solo album of original material done, and we're going to put it out in October, and all of our touring has been pushed back to 2021 as well, and we're acting as if we got Japan, Australia, a Europe run coming together for spring next year, and so we thought, let's move the original album back, because that needs to be supported and toured. And then literally at the same time, me and Tom Hazer were on the phone, and we said, why don't we do some more covers and do a covers record? And, started with, well, maybe it could be an EP. And I think now we've got like 15 or 16 songs that we did.
So
And
now it could be a double album.
yeah, exactly. And it will be actually. What if we press vinyl? It's going to have to be because the amount of content. But what's fun about that is it's us going back in time. When you break out your records, at least for me, when I'm a kid, when I go back and I break out Iron Maiden, Kiss, Sweet, all my stuff I did, Styx records growing up. It's like going home to eat mom's comfort food. It's like comfort music, and I think in a time like this, people need comfort. And it's funny that when we started reaching out to people, and we just happened to be on the phone. Tom was on the phone with Charlie Benante about a completely different issue, and he said, "Hey, you want to play in a couple songs?" So he jumped in, and Jimmy DeGrasso and I have been friends for years, and so just all these people, Dave McClain, Dave Lombardo, just these random people just kind of happen to appear, in your life on a day that you say, "Hey, you want to throw down something on this record we're doing?" And and everybody did it for free. I mean, it's just we just launched a little Indiegogo because there are some costs to it, and I'm trying not to go broke.
Right.
Pandemic putting records out, but it's fun, it's literally for the enjoyment of us jamming, playing together, and having fun doing this. So that's the whole spirit of New Cover.
I definitely want to get into why you picked the covers, how a little bit more into how you grab some of these guest appearances, because dude, it is just chocked full. It is literally amazing. But I kind of want to dig into your psyche a little bit though, Dave, and find out how you got to where you are today, and what is the music in the Ellefson house as a kid growing up? What are you being exposed to that leads you down this path?
Well, my dad did not have a musical ear at all. He was the business guy. He thought very linear like that. My mother had the musical gift, saw Elvis a couple times when she was just a young girl. I remember there was a Mary Wells record, and she was sang with Diana Ross, of course, and the Supremes. There was a Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand, little 45. That was my first stuff I got exposed to. I'd get in the car with my dad and pickup truck, because we grew up on a farm. I'd turn the radio up and he would turn it down so we could talk. And it was Neil Diamond, it was all that kind of stuff. And then it was funny, when I was about 10 years old, we had a bus driver. My brother and I would get picked up second or third on the bus routes. We'd be on the bus for an hour in the morning. And we had a bus driver who picked up, he was the pastor, the son of our pastor at our Lutheran church. And he had long hair, and he was just a cool guy. I remember his name was Dwight. And he listened to, he was a rocker, so he listened to WLS AM out of Chicago. And I live about 8-hour drive from Chicago, so AM waves, of course, because they're longer, will reach over to my little Jackson, Minnesota. So on that, it was Styx. I mean, everything from Lorelei, Lady, that kind of stuff. Sweet, Ballroom Blitz, Fox on the Run had just come out. Then, of course, ELO, and that was in Bachman Turner Overdrive. Kiss Shout It Out Loud was a big hit on the radio. That was the stuff that I heard that and went, wow. And at the same time, there was stuff like ABBA, Afternoon Delight, pop songs like that, so, but then Chicago and then I started listening to another FM station out in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, because, I was the guy that had to go out and do the grunt work on the farm, pick rock, walk beans, and, do those kind of stuff. So I'd get my buddies from town, and we'd go out and we'd be doing the hard labor on the farm, but we'd always have the FM radio on. And so, this is Dan Fogelberg, all this kind of stuff was coming across my radar. 10cc, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Paul, I was not a Beatles fan just because my age, I missed them. Paul McCartney and Wings was quite popular when I was, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. So, Wings was kind of my Beatles until I could go back and kind of educate myself on the Beatles later.
So who takes you down the heavy path?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, obviously hearing Kiss and seeing that, that drew me, and probably most of my, my now famous rock and roll buddies.
Like everybody.
Yeah, I mean, everybody from Todd Kearns to the Anthrax guys
Totally.
to Mike Portnoy, all of us, we all seemed to, that spoke to us. That drew us in. There was something dark. There was obviously a fantasy involved with the whole Kiss thing with the creatures and their whole mystique. And that, that obviously, that was a big thing for us. That really drew us in to this fantasy world of rock and roll. And I think we all lost ourselves into that. And that is why we are here, quite honestly. And it's funny that, then I would move to LA upon my graduation, meet Dave Mustaine, we start Megadeth. And Megadeth is the opposite of Kiss. It's stripped down jeans, t-shirts. It's more like the Ramones or something, where it's very just, kind of high energy, jeans, t-shirts, leather jackets, it's the opposite of Kiss.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I meet a lot of people who say they're inspired by Megadeth and they don't sound anything like Megadeth. Some of them are even pop musicians, Post Malone, guys like this, And so I like, that when people are inspired by my music, our music, and they find their own voice and their own path to do their own thing.
Has Dave Mustaine changed much in the way that he approaches music since you met him?
Not at all. Not one bit.
Yeah.
He's pretty much the same. And I admired his tenacity and stability in that area. Dave, this is a very different band because when Dave and I met, we would sit around and talk about, the idea was conceptualized before we even played a note together. I mean, Dave was writing a song called Megadeth, which was then retitled Set the World on Fire. And it didn't even come out until our third album, So Far So Good So What. That was the very first song that Dave had written post Metallica. And I met Dave, literally like 6 weeks after he was out of Metallica. So it was a pretty fresh wound. Dave was really very kind of introspective on his life and kind of looking at things of what had happened. And I think he was kind of considering his options. He kept saying, he goes, if this thing doesn't work out, I'm just going to go into computers, and I'd be driving. I was the only guy that had a car. So I'd drive everybody around, and Dave would ride shotgun and he'd always turn the radio on. In LA, it was KLOS and KMET. And back in that day, radio was so cool, FM radio, because they played everything from Yes and Deep Purple to Ronnie Dio and Iron Maiden, Power Slave, and and then they'd have these metal shows, that would have the
Right.
newest stuff that was going on. I remember when Queen of the Reich from Queensryche was on like the midnight metal show because they were one of the new bands, and then eventually Megadeth they put one of our demos on there and stuff. So such a creative, just an awesome time to land in LA in 1983. So I don't know, the good Lord, had me and Dave meet for whatever his purpose is. So.
And what was that meeting? How did that meeting take place? Like, how did you meet him?
Well, first, me and my buddies were just looking for some place to buy some beer and cigarettes. That's why we knocked on his door, because he lived right up above us. And we saw him walking around in the apartment building. He looks like a cool guy, and we were underage, so we couldn't even buy beer in California because we were only 18 and the drinking age was 21.
21, yeah.
And so we needed an accomplice, But, Dave was cool, and it was kind of that, we buy, he'll fly kind of thing. So we just walked down to the corner liquor store. I still go in that liquor store from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
Just to kind of relive this moment, you know what I mean? Because we went in, bought a case of Heineken. I remember Dave had it over his shoulder, and he was walking back. I don't even know if he had shoes on. Maybe he did. I guess probably had to have shoes on to get in the store. But, he was just like the quintessential kind of California surfer, rock and roll guy. They didn't make people like that where I grew up in Minnesota. That was not. Right. Dave was just the epitome of this polar opposite of everything that I had grown up with. And yet, there I was, and he was talking about this band Metallica that he was in, but we had not heard of yet because Kill 'Em All hadn't come out yet. And Dave is a great storyteller, and these stories he would tell, and he's very captivating. And I soon realized, walking on Hollywood Boulevard, there was a lot of Vince Neil lookalikes, a bunch of David Lee Roth lookalikes. Obviously, Van Halen was very popular. Motley Crue was just starting to really take off. The US Festival had just happened. a couple months earlier. And Randy Rhoads had sadly just passed. So Ozzy Osbourne was getting most of his musicians out of LA. So there was always like, we got to get to LA. That's where it's going on, you know? And, you know, so that just to be there and then, you know, to meet Dave, and, you know, I could tell Dave, I was like, okay, Dave is destined to be a star. I mean, this is a guy who's, you know, that is his purpose on the planet. And he seemed very focused on how to get there. He's like, he had the map, he knew the way to get up the mountain. And, you know, and as he was the general, he needed a lieutenant, and that became me, you know, and that's really been our relationship ever since, from day one.
That's a really good way of putting it. I'm curious, what was your first concert?
My very first concert was Kiss on the Rock and Roll Over tour, February 6th, 1977 at the Met Center in Bloomington.
Remembers the date.
Well, and what's funny about it is I just saw, you know, I've seen Kiss a bunch, and of course we, you know, performed with them and you know, done shows with them as well. But yeah, I went to go see the end of the road tour when they came through Phoenix. Early last year, I guess. And I bought a t-shirt, and it had the Kiss Destroyer. It looked like the t-shirt I bought at that show in 1977. I didn't know bootleggers, but I bought a shirt outside from a bootlegger, and it was a crappy shirt. You know, you wash it once and it falls apart. Yeah. And, you know, I was that kid. I didn't know, you know. And so I bought this shirt. And so at the end of the road tour, there's a shirt that kind of looked like that. It was the Destroyer cover, and on the back it had a bunch of tour dates. And I got home and I'm looking at the tour dates, and I'm going, how come they don't have Glendale, Arizona on the dates? And I realized that these are the tour dates from the Destroyer into the Rock and Roll Over tour, because they were kind of seamless. I think it was kind of a seamless transition. They didn't change their costumes. And I remember Eddie Trunk and I were, you know, beefing over, like, was that Destroyer, was that Rock and Roll Over, was that Love Gun? Because those three kind of ran together, and I love when you get with other Kiss nerds, because, you know, and we got people to do the same with Megadeth now. You know, they nerd out over what show, what song list, and so I get it. I am part of one of those bands now, and so you know, again, kind of back to No Cover. It's just this whole circle, you know, we're fanboying out and paying honor to, you know, the idols and the heroes that got guitars in our hands and gave us a path forward. And then I, of course, meet Dave, and, you know, we find our own path forward, and we've now inspired a bunch of groups, you know, that have come behind us. So it's, you know, it's nice to just be part of this sort of cycle of life.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that up, back to the No Cover. It's out on October 2nd. Mm-hmm. And you're paying homage big time to DefLeppard with the cover of your album.
Yeah.
Talk about how they played a part in your musical life. You know,
DefLeppard is probably the one band that brought this life that, you know, I now live in and work in, brought it right to my turntable and made it possible for me to do it. Like I see behind you, Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. You know, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Kiss, these are mythical figures on some magazine cover. It was a dream, it was a fantasy, but what's the reality? How do you get there? You know, I remember even going to see Kiss. And when I saw them, in my mind, because I was always the guy in my bands that I bought and owned the PA. We built the lights. You know, my dad helped me get a trailer and a van and dedicated one of the sheds on our farm. You know, insulated it, put a furnace in it so we could rehearse. You know, so I was really, you know, the nuts and bolts guy that really, you know, kind of held this stuff together. You know, when we had to do promo kits and photos and demos, I was always, you know, the guy, you know, helping put that together on the phone with the booking agent. So when I saw Kiss, even though I was only 13, I went, you know what, I got to figure out how to do that. You know, it's like watching airplanes take off. When I moved to Scottsdale in 1993, I took some flying lessons, because I was like, I got to figure out how these planes get off the ground. Like, how does this work, you know? And I only took a couple lessons. I realized flying is not for me. I'm better as a passenger than a pilot. But I just needed to know, you know, and I think that's been my lifelong pursuit is, how did Kiss do that? Like, how does that all work, you know? And you know, I've kind of figured it out now, but there's always something ahead of you. We play with AC/DC, obviously Metallica are massive. You see U2 or the Stones, and you're like, there's another level. Like how do you scale that last summit up there, of the top of the mountain? And, so I think that is always very compelling. And Def Leppard, because On Through the Night on the back cover, I could tell they were on tour with AC/DC because of how the Malcolm's Marshall heads and the SVT heads were set up next to the drum riser. That was kind of the either Highway to Hell or probably the Back in Black tour, right? And I looked at it, and Rick Allen, the drummer, was I think 16 at the time, and they were all young. They were all like, Joe Elliott, I think, was the oldest one, and he might have been 19 or something. And so I remember when the drummer in my band brought it into rehearsal. He goes, because we were at that time starting to get into the first couple of Maiden records, Motorhead, the new wave of British heavy metal. And when that Def Leppard record walked in the door, man, Def Leppard, it's like, I can do this. If these guys are this young and I'm that age, I think I was 15 or 16. I was like, you know what, I can freaking do this. And that's why that album holds such significance to me. And Wasted, which is what the song we cover, is a song I played growing up. And in fact, when Dave played me Mechanics, which Metallica amended it and then released it as the Four Horsemen. But when Dave played me the Metallica No Life Till Leather demo, like the cymbal chokes, right? I heard Lars doing that in Metallica. And so right away, I've made this connection. Again, if it's your vibe, it's your tribe, and I made this connection to Dave, to Metallica. I was like, fuck, these guys are doing exactly what Def Leppard was doing. And it was this youthful hunger. So, that record is a freaking pin drop of a moment of another part of the journey for me in my life.
It really is incredible. And the funny thing, or the odd thing, I guess, is that they don't play much of that record live.
Well, it's funny. Vivian, we were in Milan 2 years ago, and the band opening for us was Last in Line. And I knew only a little about them. Of course, it was like, oh my God, Vinny Appice's here, Phil Suzanne, and Vivian Campbell. And Dave had just mentioned, he goes, God, it would be so cool if Megadeth and Def Leppard did some dates together, right? So I went over to Vinny, and he was changing the strings on his guitar. And I said, hey, so funny, we were just talking about Megadeth and Def Leppard, and they said how much we love On Through the Night, and Vivian just kind of chuckled, and he goes, we don't play anything off that, or maybe they play one now, but how they really don't, they kind of revere themselves more of this, kind of American hard rock pop band, yet there's this whole legion of us who, High and Dry and for sure On Through the Night, like those were the records that spoke to our metal hearts, because they were a part of the new wave of British heavy metal, along with Maiden and Motorhead, Venom, Diamond Head. I mean, those were the bands that really created everything. That's why there's a big four. That's why there's a Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax. And, from there, Exodus, Overkill, Testament, a lot of the other bands that we all grew up together. And On Through the Night is absolutely a part of that.
So how did you decide on the songs that you were going to cover? I mean, because that's probably one of the harder things to decide, isn't it?
It totally is. Well, there's a couple of them. Wasted seemed to come pretty quickly. I think I threw that one out right away. Yeah. Tom being 10 years younger than me, and, by him, he wanted to sing on everything. I said, okay, well, you're going to go back. I'm going to take you down a history lane to a world you probably have never even heard some of these songs, like Bachman Turner Overdrive, Not Fragile. I mean, that album, that was pre-Kiss. I remember we had a farmhand who worked for us, and we had nice John Deere tractors on the farm. I mean, for farming, it was pretty comfortable. But, and I would ride with this guy, Gary was his name. I would ride with him in the tractor because he had this BTO Not Fragile 8-track that he'd play. And I would ride around with him because he was a cool guy and I just wanted to hear BTO all day, right?
8-track.
8-track. And then, of course, I got my Ramones Rocket to Russia 8-track. I would buy things in 8-track knowing, farming season's coming. I'm going to have to be in the tractor. I should probably get it in 8-track so I can sort of, sorry about that. So I can listen to it when I'm working in the fields, But that BTO and the needle drop is a bass line, right? And that's what I was like, that's a bass. And I remember the gatefold record, I open it up and inside there's a picture of Bachman Turner Overdrive, and Randy Bachman's got a Strat, Blair's got a Gibson SG, and CF Turner, the bass player, who was also one of the singers, has a Rickenbacker black and white 4001. And I went, and it was long, it had fat strings, there's only 4 strings. It's like, you know what, I want to do that. That looks cool, So I didn't know how to play it, of course, and I didn't really even know the role of it. I just heard it on that BTO, again, needle drop on song 1, side A, Bachman Turner Overdrive, and it's like, that's freaking awesome, man. So.
Wow, you are a full-on music geek.
I am. I really am.
It's amazing, like the stuff you remember, like the tours of this or whatever, and like what they're wearing and what they're holding on album covers. And
oh yeah, I mean, it's like,
awesome.
That's, I get it. When Megadeth, when we did the Rust in Peace 20th anniversary, we in the late 90s, we did an auction and we sold off a ton of our gear that we had because we just had a bunch of it and it served us no more purpose. And so we sold off like the Peace Sells backdrop, we sold off the Rust in Peace backdrop, and Dave had stayed in touch with, or he knew, or someone in our organization knew the girl who bought it up in Hollywood. So when we did the tour, we got that backdrop back from her and we actually used it. Eventually it started to shred and fall apart, so we had to have a new one made. And, that's why I went, I made sure I had Jackson guitars, the Harkey amps, the, stretch jeans, the same wristbands, because I get it. I mean, when I went to, me and Marty Friedman were second row, dead center when Kiss did the 1996, the reunion tour, right? Okay. And because we have a friend at the arena in Phoenix, Marty lived there at the time. So we went down and we were second row, like a couple of kids. And part of you, okay, now we're older and we're professionals and we know how Kiss does this, so there's a part of you that you're taking you back, Kiss, it was basically the Kiss Alive 2 costumes. And so part of you just goes back to, again, I'm 14 years old, Kiss Alive 2 just came out. I'm just remembering the emotions of that. There they are, they're freaking 20 feet from us. And yet at the same time, I'm going, oh yeah, the guitar tech's over there and the monitor console, and they got the lighting. I know some of the workings behind the scenes, So when we did the Rust in Peace tour, it was important to me that our fans, whether they were, my age and they had seen the original Rust in Peace, or in a lot of cases, they were teenagers up against the barricade in the front row, coming out to see the mighty Megadeth play this legendary album that they've been hearing about, probably from their parents and their friends. And there they were. It was important to me and to us that we recreate that as close to the original feeling and the look of the stage and everything about it that we had done back in 1990 and 91 when that album came out. So, the music business is an emotion business. We're into displacing emotions and getting people out of day-to-day routines in life and taking them off down into journeys and remembering eras and parts of their life with our music. That's really what our job is, I think.
100%. Is it weird to be releasing a record now?
I don't think so. I mean, there's been a ton of this stuff obviously online. Charlie Benante's probably done some of the more adventurous. Him and Alex Skolnick have done a couple of the more adventurous, like, kind of Zoom or, the Foursquare jams on the internet. I think for us, because I think this is something we really want to have that lives forever, us doing these songs. And now as I'm hearing the mixes, I'm hearing them, I'm going, man, okay, we stayed true to the original parts, the original arrangements. It's almost as if, like, we did a version of Free Will Burning by Judas Priest. And it's almost as if Judas Priest went back in the studio and recut it with modern day guitar tones.
Cool.
And that's what I want it to be. It's almost like, you know, if DefLeppard went in and recut Wasted today with all the technology and everything sounding as badass as it is today, that's what I want it to sound like. And it's fun to go to, you know, because when I was 14, I 15, you know, playing Wasted, that was all the better I was. Now I've had my own experiences, so I can come back. I think all of us in our band, we can come back and play this stuff because we're, you know, our skill set is pretty advanced now since we've been making records and touring for all these years as well.
I guess it's easier to release like a covers album as opposed to the full length that you have in the can. Like you need to tour that full length,
right?
Whereas it would be fucking impossible to tour, would it not, this covers album?
Well, here's the other thing too. So as much as, look, obviously, you know, when I'm in Megadeth, we come out, the battle's half won because people are already there to hear our songs. They know what we're doing. But when I go out and go out and do an Ellefson solo thing, I'm obviously playing some new original material. And you know what that's like to hear new original material. And I think the songs are good, and I think it gets people's attention. But, you know, throwing a cover in once in a while also keeps people attracted and kind of keeps them from, you know, taking too many pee breaks during the show, you know, right. Because it's like, oh, I know that song. Oh, wow, check it out. They're doing a cover of that song.
Dude,
so I think
totally, like especially when it's a band that you love, like Megadeth doing any cover is like, what?
And we've done a bunch in there. And again, the way, you know, Megadeth would do a cover, we very much personalize them. We very much make them our own. I think with the No Cover album, it's about, you know, obviously making it our own, but in modern day version of it. But also there's a feeling, I think, with all of us to keep them true to some of the original spirit. And like, for instance, you're asking about choosing the songs, I picked a Sweet song that Todd Kearns is singing on, because we're sitting there going, because right away Tom was like, dude, I can't sing Sweet. I said, I know. Look, we'll make it work so that you're on it in some manner, but there does need to be, that's a pretty particular voice. And so Todd's name came up, and I hit Todd, and right away he goes, Sweet harmonies, you know, the harmonies of Sweet, challenge accepted. And, you know, then he starts sending it back. Another one was Sheer Heart Attack by Queen.
Okay.
You know, and that's the thing, is we're going for not the obvious, you know, we're not just playing Breaking the Law, Cold Gin, Back in Black. You know, we're not kind of doing the obvious bar standards. We're taking those iconic groups, but we're digging down into some pretty deep cut catalog tracks.
It's pretty awesome. Which is pretty awesome, dude.
And like, you know, with Sheer Heart Attack, I was saying to Tom, and all of a sudden Tom goes, dude, Bumblefoot could do it. I go, oh my God, Bumblefoot is the secret weapon for our whole thing, you know? So he said, Ron, can you do it? And I mean, he sends back, I mean, it sounds like a choir. It's layered up. It sounds so good. I mean, I was driving on my car the last couple of days listening to these mixes. I'm just going, holy cow, this is so good, man. I mean, and it makes it, I love when you hear your own records back and they sound so much better than you ever thought they would be. And you listen to them and you go, God, I can't even believe I'm even playing on that. Because it's, you know, and that to me is me singing everybody else's praises around me, because, you know, I've been very fortunate enough that a bunch of really great musicians and really cool people want to hang out with me. And they take what I do and what we all do together and just take it to the frickin' stratosphere, man. Yeah. So it's, you know, to hear Doral Pesh singing on Sheer Heart Attack is frickin' unbelievable, you know.
Amazing, dude. I cannot wait. We cannot wait as fans. We can't wait for this album to come out. I want to respect your time, man. I was told I had 20 minutes with you. I'm over half hour now. If you're cool with it, I have a few fan questions that I would love to get to.
Yeah, we can do a couple. Yeah. Then I'm going to go to the beach since I'm on vacation.
Yeah, I feel the same thing.
My
wife's probably chirping me right now to do the same thing here. So, all right. So Brian wants to know, what are the 3 albums that you would need on a deserted island?
Kiss Destroyer, Judas Priest, Unleashed in the East, and the third one, I don't know. I might go for Billy Idol, Rebel Yell.
Wow. Cam wants
Perfect album those 3 albums are like perfect in my opinion.
I mean,
every note, everything about them, perfect, you know?
Yeah. Especially Destroyer.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
What's funny, I listened to Destroyer now with Bob Ezrin producing, and I listened to it, and it's like, I go, this could have been an Alice Cooper record, because, you know, now that I kind of am more studied in Bob Ezrin's productions. And
right, he did some Cooper, didn't he?
Early Alice, yeah, exactly. He produced a bunch of that early Alice stuff. And yet I hear it, and there's subtleties in there that, because I read these Kiss books, you know, and the Kiss guys, they kind of don't always speak so highly about how easy the process was of that. And I get it. I've made records like that too. I'm like, you know what, that record was a fucking pain in the ass to make, you know, and I don't want to, you know, yet at sometimes those are the records that made me grow the most. You know, they pushed me to the limit. They pushed me outside my comfort zone. Yeah. And they made me a better musician. They made me a better writer on every level, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, and that's the thing with producers. You know, producers have been my best music teachers ever, you know, because they have challenged me with ideas. Because it isn't just about sitting here playing scales. At that point, they challenge your musicality, your choice of notes, different rhythmic figures. Hey, try this, try that, go up, go down, try something in between. And, you know, to me, I've grown the most by being produced and letting someone else be sort of the boss over me when I'm making records. Even my own records, I let other people produce me because I know they're going to hear something different that I may not be hearing with my perspective.
Right, which actually dovetails nicely into Jared's question. He says, if David has an idea for a Megadeth song, how good does it have to be considered? Or how has Mustaine matured in his ability to work as a group over the years?
Well, I think I think certainly you can hear and you see it on the writing credits, the collaborative eras, especially Countdown to Extinction, Euthanasia, even Cryptic Writings. And that's because that lineup was together for a few records, and we started to figure out how to work together. And that's a big part of it is being able to work together as a group. And everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. And I think if you sort of tap everybody's strengths, you hear the best of the best. And that's always what you want to try to get in any team setting, and certainly in a band. And, you know, quite honestly, you know, with Megadeth, it's like Dave writes amazing riffs. You know, we don't need 3 riff writers. Like, Dave writes some of the best riffs in the world. I write good riffs too, but if they sound like Dave, well, you know, Dave and I always had a saying: if we both agree on everything, then one of us is unnecessary, right? Sometimes you need the conflict, you need the disagreeing, because it presents a different way to look at something. You know, I'll come in and I'll write. I try to bring things into Megadeth that the other guys wouldn't do, I guess is what I'm saying here. Long story short is I'll bring in some kind of clean guitar arpeggiating thing. I'll bring in maybe a vocal idea. I'll bring in a lyric. And so I try to bring things in that traditionally aren't things maybe Dave or Kiko would come up with, or Dirk in this case now. Right. You know, because that's a piece that Megadeth doesn't have without me, you know. And I think when we kind of really we stay in our lane, we always say that over here in Team Ellefson: stay in your lane, do what you do, and be great at what you do in your lane. That then you help the group sound, you know, better by you being there.
Right. All right, Dave. 2 more, and I'll let you get going to the beach here. So Cam wants to know, who is your favorite superhero and your favorite superhero movie? If you could have a superpower, which power would you want?
God, you know, when I was a kid, Superman and Aquaman were my guys, right? So I'd say probably Superman, just because, you know, he can fly and he always
got everything.
Yeah, he always had the girl, you know, with Lois Lane, right? So Clark Kent, and I think in a lot of ways we're all like that. We're sort of the dweeby dude until we step on the, you know. The phone booth for Superman is probably the stage for us, you know, and you get
totally
the superpower.
A great analogy. Totally.
Yeah. The trick is to take the cape off when you get off the stage. You know what I mean? Because
right.
When you're not on the stage, you can't fly anymore. You got to remember the limits of your superpowers. You know.
Exactly.
So I think that's probably that one. That would be my superpower.
Have you got a favorite movie?
You know, it's hard to say favorite. You know, I mean, the Pulp Fiction stands out as one of the more twisted favorites. You know, and at the same time, you know, I remember a couple that always stuck with me. Is I remember going with my brother and a couple friends when I was a teenager, just over the border of Minnesota, down kind of heading towards Spirit Lake, Iowa. There was this movie theater, outdoor movie theater, and I remember watching Alien. You know, and when the alien stuck on the guy's face, you know, just scared the living daylights out of me. I was just a kid, you know.
Yeah.
Well, that I think probably the first Friday the 13th. You know, those are the ones that scared me. Yeah, the scary ones seem to stick with me the most.
Yeah. What are you binge watching lately?
You know, I just watched. Okay, so I finished Mad Men because I never saw it. I guess it was on tour and busy, and then I watched House of Cards.
House of Cards.
House of Cards is frighteningly real, I think, in some ways.
Oh, right. Wow.
And then I watched Dead to Me on Netflix.
Is that the Ricky Gervais?
Christina Applegate? I think that's Dead to Me.
That's right.
I think that's what it's called. Yep.
Yeah.
Then I watched The Righteous Gemstones.
Great show, right?
Amazing. And then I'm kind of going back. I think pre-Righteous Gemstones was Vice Principals. So I'm watching those, and those are HBO, and that's the same guy that did.
And did you get into his Eastbound and Down?
I have not. Is that
dude? Fucking write this down right now, man. Eastbound and Down, like that is.
I love him. You know, that's the thing. I you know, kind of like musicians. When I get into an artist, I'll kind of track with them. I'll buy their back stuff. I'll kind of stay with them to see where they're going. I'm like that with directors, actors. You know, I'll kind of track with that and sort of stay along with it. You know, obviously I've watched Bradley Cooper movies. I love Brad Pitt movies. You know, they're our current heroes. You know, but they make great films. You know, I love them.
Right on.
Yeah.
Dave, thanks again, man, for taking the time and joining us here in Vancouver, Canada. We're looking forward to the Ellefson covers album. Who would have thought, man? That's insane.
Yeah. Kind of a random left turn, but why not? You know,
love it though. Love it, man. I can't wait to hear it. October 2nd, and then realistically, I guess the full length will be out probably next year. Yeah, next year, first quarter, second quarter, something like that. I mean, you know, we'll kind of, because we're putting it out through Combat, which, you know, I own and we run internally, we could kind of frame it, you know, a little bit around, you know, touring coming up and you know, look, hopefully things start to open up. Number one, everybody's got to be healthy and stay healthy as the world turns, if you will, and as things hopefully open up and in live music, you know. So, but yeah, I'd say probably for, you know, again, first, second quarter, something like that. We'll be looking to put out the Ellefson full length, which will be the original material. Deadly. Dude, thanks again, man. We'll see you online.
Yeah, you're welcome.